Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. I'm Gill, host of Monday Match Analysis, with two outstanding tennis journalists, Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. This is episode 3. The topic is the GOAT debate. We won't be engaging in the GOAT debate per se, but we want to talk about the GOAT debate as a phenomenon, existentially. But we start with some breaking news because on the last episode of 3, we discussed Rafael Nadal's U.S. Open decision. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And we have a bit of breaking news about a couple hours ago from the time we're recording, which is that Nadal is in the entry list for Cincinnati. Amy, you were the only one who thought that Nadal was going to play the U.S. Open. Joel and I, at that time, and we can save it to see if this maybe changed our mind. Are you taking a victory lap right now or not so much?
Well, let me add a little bit of nuance to that. I didn't say I thought he was going to play. I said that it would kill him not to play. And I still believe that. So, if you're going to put me on the spot, again, I'm not close to him. Who is? So nobody knows. But if I were him and knowing him as I do, I would desperately want to play. And so I think by putting himself in the entry for this tournament, this opening tournament, I think he's hedging his bets. He can punt, he can wait and see. So no, I'm not going to take a victory lap, but this is in line with my thinking. Yes.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it's not as if players, it's not as if players want to show up in New York a day before their first round match. That has never been the scheduling. You want to practice on the hard courts at the Billie Jean King Tennis Center. They're going to be there anyway. So maybe it's not as much of a burden to play Cincinnati as we think, but it still seems crazy to me. And I'm just not ready to say that Nadal is going to play 3 weeks of hard court tennis before the clay court season with no break in between.
Yeah, see, I think the Lundy line got a run on base. Rafa, he's on that list, so he didn't officially withdraw, and I get it. And I guess we're all saying, none of us are saying yes, no, but I get his deep desire to want to play a major, as players do. I get his sadness if he doesn't play. But the minute he puts his feet on that clay in Madrid, I think he's going to feel quite glad. I mean, Again, we're not predicting, we're just wondering, but I think the thinking, look, there's also aspects of a quarantine upon arrival in New York. Or is that, I'm not sure, has that been waived? Either way, 3 straight weeks of tennis in New York, which is really 3.5 weeks, because again, you don't want to just show up the day before your first match in the New York Cincinnati. So I still have a hard time seeing Nadal wanting to commit to 20 days, 22 days in New York, and then get on a plane, and then gear up for his core competency of Paris. I just have a hard time seeing him wanting to do that, but he may. And again, the other X factor, who I don't know how fit he is. I don't know. He might have been right. There's match play, of course, but his body. This has been the longest rest, a good long rest.
Joel, in terms of the quarantine, perhaps we should be talking, or at least give some airtime to whether or not the U.S. Open is in danger and will it even happen. So let's shift there real quick before we get to the GOAT debate. I believe athletes are exempt based on federal law, and I think New York is on board with that. So if you are an international athlete, you can travel without the quarantine. But I'm not so sure that will be the case for the EU, and I don't think anyone is 100% clear on what will come of going back to Europe. And
right.
That is where you might get that 14-day quarantine, which to me is the biggest red flag roadblock right now that stands in the way of any kind of normal field that we might hope for the U.S. Open.
No, we're going to see some very interesting fields at both of those majors, assuming they each happen. And we're going to see some way lower cutoff points. We're going to see some great tennis players. I mean, cutoff point might be 190. For all we know, it could be way, way down. And that doesn't mean those are really good tennis players. So we might see some fascinating tennis going on at both of those events.
I'll just throw in that based on what's happening in professional sports right now with Major League Baseball trying to get started again, and the Marlins, the outbreak, and then the NBA is about to start, and they did their sweep, and nobody within the bubble tested positive. And I tweeted this. I think that what we're starting to see is a bubble scenario seems to work, seems to be effective. There's at least a chance that you can contain it within the bubble structure. Not bubble, where you're getting on planes and you're traveling and you're doing all this stuff, it doesn't seem to work. So yeah, I mean, the way, if they plan it right and they follow the NBA model, they have a fighting chance to get this done.
That would be fantastic, but we'll see, tennis with the traveling and from tournament to tournament. But yeah, the NBA thing is going to be really interesting to see. And the tennis thing, also tennis, World Team Tennis. World Team Tennis has worked pretty well. The only thing was Danielle Collins went rogue. Kind of, she was like the equivalent. I wrote this last week. She's like the person who says, yeah, I want to play league tennis. Just let me play my match. And then I won't stay for the other matches. I got to go. And so she just left. And I thought that was pretty unfortunate. And then she didn't really take responsibility for it either. In the New York Times interview, she pretty much said, oh, they didn't tell me I had to stay, which we all knew. The minute that World Team Tennis was announced, it was a bubble. Everybody knew that. It was, and I know from people I've talked to, they were told it plenty of times. You're staying, what you have to do is stay at this incredible luxury resort, the Greenbrier, one of the most amazing places in the world.
Well, World Team Tennis dropped the hammer. They threw Danielle Collins out of the event, essentially, and that was that. Let's get to our main topic, which is the GOAT debate. Joel, you wrote about this 10 days ago or so for tennis.com. I take it that all three of us, I can speak for myself, I don't particularly enjoy, maybe that's putting it kindly, I'm for the most part annoyed when people try to engage me in the GOAT debate. And it seems that you are in that vicinity with me.
I'm not only in that vicinity, I love that vicinity because to me, I wrote the article, it's the wrong question. I don't mind talking about the greatest tennis players ever. I don't mind talking about why they're great. I very much believe in kind of what I call kind of a triage of A+ and A's and A minuses, but the whole who's the best ever. And it's funny, I was talking about it with someone, I said, it's funny. That happens in sports because it's competitive. It doesn't happen much in the arts. I don't hear someone say, God, I think Shakespeare, God, if he gave Shakespeare a computer, I think he would just knock the socks out of James Joyce. You don't hear that about how I think Shakespeare, if he had played Tolstoy, well, Tolstoy wrote novels. You don't hear that. You just hear people celebrating what makes these people great. And I wish there was more of that in tennis. I just find the whole GOAT thing, it's not edifying. I'm not really learning when I'm comparing. And then even now, then someone said to me, well, you can't compare eras, but what about in this era? And this is a person I know who loves Federer. I said, oh, now what you're saying is who plays tennis the best, the way I think tennis should be played? And even eras, they don't all start at the same point. They're not the same age. Even in an era, what's wrong? And it's funny, someone would say to me, well, you guys are doing a show about these three, aren't they? The GOAT? Yeah, they're definitely among the greatest ever. I put them all in the A+ list, just like I would put, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and Wilt Chamberlain in that list. But I just found it, and I just find it kind of non-edifying and it doesn't help me raise consciousness of the people I'm writing for. It's just kind of barroom talk.
Well, I come from a little bit different perspective. My mother and I got into a huge debate on text the other night about politics. And I realized she's an ex-litigator. She lives to argue. It's part of her enjoyment. And I think there's a lot of that going on in the GOAT debate. People just enjoy doing it. Us three, it's almost too big for us, that kind of thing. And we don't really do it that way.
Too big
So,
or too small?
this show is not going to be a GOAT debate show.
No.
Like, it's about the three of them, but it's not going to be who's the best. And for me, one of the big reasons that it's not going to be is because it's still unwritten. They're still playing, and that's why we're doing this. I mean,
even if they had all stopped, I don't want to talk about. I'm not interested in who was necessarily better. There might be some data. Hey, look, for all we know, there might be some data, and one of them might win 10 more majors, and there might be some data that proves, wow, this guy was better than those guys. And I guess you can see it just like the way you came to see that Laver was better than Lou Hode, let's say, maybe, whatever that means. But it's just really difficult, and I just find it kind of short-sighted. But also, wow, I don't know if I'd want to get in a text argument with your mother and a political issue. Argue with your mother by text. You guys don't want to chat a little, Amy?
We're not speaking right now.
All right.
Let's change gears.
Let's get back to the three.
Here's my little pet peeve with this, and I don't want to get on Lindsey Vonn too much, the Olympic ski champion, but she tweeted a while ago when the GOATs debate was coming up, and I think it might have actually been about Federer. They were talking about the different GOATs in different sports, and this is actually after she'd broken up with Tiger Woods. She said, Tiger Woods is my GOAT, because there are lots of GOATs. And I just had to say, no. There is a greatest of all times. That's what the GOAT means. That's what it stands for. So while we may not debate it on this show, I think there probably is only one, and there really only should be one. It shouldn't be like everybody gets a trophy.
Oh no, but I don't even think there should be any. Why should there be one? Why should there be any? Why should the question?
I'm a little bit more with Amy. I think the question becomes a lot more, I guess, fruitful once all three are done. But to try to call the race before it's over. Now, you don't see it as a race. I understand that it's not a race.
Go back 15 years. Pretend these guys don't exist. Are we supposed to then engage in it on behalf of Pete Sampras and Rod Laver? Why is it even the right question? Why does it boil down to one?
No, I agree with you. It doesn't really get my juices flowing. I don't think it's as interesting. And I think it becomes, look, these three have devout fan bases, and this has become a beast. There is tons of tribalism. You can look at YouTube comments. You can look at Twitter. You can look at Reddit forums. Most of the intelligent conversations about tennis, they go beyond trying to argue if Federer, who's best between Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. Where I stand on this, though, where I do think we differ, Joel, is I think the slam race is really, really significant. I think that's something that will pretty much control the narrative when history looks back on this.
I want it. Well, the slam tally is a neat thing. I get it. Like the home run tally has its significance, or the total points, or touchdown passes, or running yardage. I get that, but it's just it's like someone said, "Wow, you so like history." I said, "Well, yeah, but look at all sorts of history. Look at the kid like the kid who's going to make the case, Patrick. He's Mahomes. He's the greatest quarterback ever. Well, what about?" And he might sort of know Brady, and the guy who knows Brady might not know much from Joe Montana. And I didn't know that much about, Johnny Unitas. So it's just understanding. I don't understand why it ever has to boil down to one. And I go back to a music critic I talked to once and I use this in the story. The music critic said, yeah, people want to know about who the greatest ever is because it shows a lack of deep interest in the whole culture.
Sure.
The whole culture. It's like, it's much easier to go around and say, Shakespeare's the greatest writer, the Beatles are the greatest musicians, X is the greatest tennis player, than just actually, well, wait a second, what? Or it's like when someone says, yeah, this is the best pizza ever. Well, okay, what's number two? What's the number two pizza? Is the number three pizza? What are you doing here? What are we really learning? So I guess I'm not saying all those things are way in it. They're right. There might be more to continue. But I guess I think
it's useful because one thing that I don't like is historical revisionism or lack of awareness or knowledge of history. So if people say that Tiger Woods is the greatest of all time, well, yeah, I mean, he has 15 majors, and there was a guy, Jack Nicklaus, who had 18. So, and if you ask Tiger himself, he'll tell you that he had posters on his wall with a target that said, I want to beat that tally. I want to get more majors than that guy. And that will make me the greatest.
And Tiger, though, they were, at least with Tiger and Jack, they're playing in the same continent, except including the British Open. They're playing outside of the U.S. Open moves. The PGA is played elsewhere. Does the PGA play elsewhere? They have different places for the PGA.
Yeah.
So, but still, they're kind of. It's at least somewhat of an apples to apples. It's a little bit more closer to baseball, where there are certain things. However, it's funny you look at golf. Like, I'd love to ask people. Everyone knows about the significance of Arnold Palmer, but hardly people are aware of Gary Player. And you look at some of their records, and so it just. I see that in golf, and there aren't as many metrics in golf. And the neat thing for golf is the metrics for the last 60, 70 years have pretty much stayed the same. Whereas in tennis, we've had a lot of, as we talked before, the shifting goalposts, the forced slam era is pretty recent. The homogeneous surfaces, the 32 seeds. So there's certain things that make it easier to rack up slams. It doesn't subtract. That's not the point. I'm not doing this to hoist Rod Laver or Borg or anyone else. I'm just doing it to kind of like, I want to study. I want to learn. My favorite thing is to talk to great players and find out what it was like playing those great players. Like if you talk to Todd Martin about Pete Sampras, wow, what made Pete really, really good? And what made him the guy for those years?
Well, let me pose this to you. Point of logic, Joel. Do you acknowledge that these three that we're doing this show on are the three greatest in any order?
No, I put them all in the A+. I put them A+. I'm not doing because they play the game better. Look, I get it. I have a hard time thinking that Pancho Gonzalez would enjoy serving to Novak on a slow, hard court. But I put them all on the A+ list. I have them all A+, and I have several people A+. And even the thing about the Rushmore thing cracks me up. It's like, why? Because some sculptor decided to put 4 people there. We have to have 4. What if that sculptor loved Andrew Jackson? Would we then say, and had 5? Would then we say, is your Rushmore for basketball 5? I mean, these are just it's kind of like, I'm a big analogy person, but I find sometimes these analogies, I would definitely say there are 3 titans. There are 3 A+ guys, and I would put several other people on my A list. I think I put Rod Laver and Sampras, and then it gets a little tricky. Just like, just like, you see these baseball things. There have to be only 3 great outfielders. We could probably think of 8 great outfielders.
It's interesting that you're putting them into tiers, and then you made the art comparison earlier in the show, because I'm currently watching or attempting to watch. There's so many of them. I'm trying to watch every ESPN 30 for 30 documentary, and I'm putting them into tiers. I'm not ranking them. That would feel impossible to do. So it is funny that you've been going to the tier, the A+.
No, I like it's a triage. That I like, and that I think is germane for lots of sports. You look at baseball. It's funny, like a lot of New York, for obvious reason, people love Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle this and Mickey Mantle that. So I said, well, let me take a look at Frank Robinson. You tell me who had a better career.
But I also think the masses matter.
There are certain unbreakable records that, I mean, for me, don't get mad at me, Joel, but I really do think Babe Ruth is the GOAT of baseball. But then there are these guys with these unbreakable records like DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, Ted Williams. I mean, these are Rushmore-type achievements.
Yes.
So, tennis, we can have that too, of course.
Right, and the Rushmore doesn't have to be confined to 4. And Babe Ruth, I think that's pretty neat that you thought that in the wake of even knowing that Hank Aaron broke his record. And that's cool. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I get that. And you'd put Hank Aaron on your A+ if you were doing it that way. And the GOAT, and at least baseball. Now, there's a sport that, at least to a reasonable degree, has had some consistent metric evaluations, from 154 to 162 games. It's all pretty good. So that's not bad, though. Let's say whoever wins the Cy Young Award this year in a 60-game season, it's going to feel a little different than, let's say, Sandy Koufax or whatever. But I get that.
Joel, here's a case that fascinates me. I'm curious on your take. In public perception, Pete Sampras is placed on a higher level, higher pedestal than Ivan Lendl, I'd say, generally speaking. Sampras has 64 career titles, but he has the 14 majors. Lendl has 94 career titles, the 7 majors. To me, that speaks to the weight of that Grand Slam tally, just going back to that.
Absolutely. And Lendl would concur.
Okay.
And Lendl would concur. Like if you said to Lendl, tell you what, I'll take away 30 and give you a Wimbledon.
So you're okay with that? You're okay with the fact that Sampras is kind of put on a higher level than Lendl?
I'm okay with the fact that Sampras finished number 1 6 years in a row, and Lendl did that 3 times. That Sampras won twice as many slams as Lendl. That Sampras even they overlapped a smidge, and I think at the end of Lendl's career, the start of Sampras's. So I think, and no one, including Lendl, would put Lendl ahead of Sampras in a thing. Just like, for example, I won't put Jimmy Connors with a record 109 open era titles ahead of Sampras. Sampras is.
To me, the overriding metric in any sport is championships. In football, you talk about Super Bowls, and in baseball, you talk about World Series. In golf, you talk about majors. In tennis, you talk about slams. I was on a podcast recently, and I was making some point about, I don't know if it was Sampras or Agassi, and I said, well, who had more majors or who had more slams? And they come back at me with like, yeah, but this person had more points or career earnings or something. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Well, in the individual sports, it's pretty cool, like Sampras, Agassi. And one of the things I say for Sampras and Agassi is interesting, besides the fact that Sampras had 14 majors to Agassi's 8, 6 years finished number 1 compared to Agassi's 1. They were 14-14 around the world. At Wimbledon and the US Open, 6-0 Sampras. Case closed. Now, on the other hand, fortunately, we're not having a show about team sports, because team sports then, so you wouldn't go Steve Kerr over Charles Barkley, would you?
No, but I guarantee you get into these debates and they will bring up Davis Cup and all that.
Well, there are certain. Well, there's see, and so to me, those debates. I guess what I try to do, and this is what I try to do as a journalist, as a writer, is come up with the better question. Come up with a better question. It helps really trigger the dialogue rather than the emotional one. And we all know it. And in a way, it helped bring the show to life. Not so much us, as much as the world we occupy. And social media, the ravenous, fan bases that are going to, it's Davis Cup, it's Davis, it's Weeks. Yeah, you're just using the data that helps you marshal your favorite. It's butterfat content. That's why I like the Haagen-Dazs.
Bingo. I'll give you an example. If you look at, anyone in Nadal's camp when it comes to the GOAT debate will tell you, if there were just as many clay court tournaments as there were hard court tournaments, we can extrapolate Nadal's results on clay into what happens on hard court. The conversation, and I think this is the point that we're getting to, is so muddied. There are so many infinite variables that it is an impossible question to even begin to tackle.
But people do latch on to surface, Gill. It's like, yeah, the clay thing. It's like they forget that Nadal has won U.S. Open championships
4 times.
Just like people get obsessed with surface in the GOAT debate. I don't know why.
Rightly so, I think. I think if you look at the head-to-head, Nadal has a favorable record against Federer and Djokovic on clay, and a not so favorable record on hard and grass. Even with Martina and Everett, French Open versus Wimbledon, that was kind of the difference in the head-to-head at the end of the day.
Well, Rafa has won more on hard than Roger has on clay, But I mean, that's just
Sure.
an argument
Right.
that GOAT debating people would have. We're not.
All right, we will end it there. This has been great talking, not engaging in the GOAT debate, talking about the GOAT debate, episode 3 of 3. Rate, review on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, like the video. We will see you next time.